The next concept I want to cover is practical reason, or practical wisdom, or phronesis. So, possessing a virtue means more than just having good intentions related to some act of a virtue. So, courage is more than fearlessness. If somebody were to run against an invading army with a Swiss Army knife, that's not courage, that's stupidity, right? And in that case, the best thing to do, what courage looks like in that case, would be to run from the army and then to regroup and then fight it when there's an actual chance of winning. Honesty, like I said before, is just more than the impulse to speak from truth. You have to distinguish in virtue ethics between what a nice child would do. A child, doesn't have the virtues right away. They develop them over time. But you can have a nice kid. So you have to distinguish between what a nice kid would do and a fully virtuous person would do. Kids don't lack that practical reason to know how to apply honesty. They might sit next to somebody and go, "You stink," or something like that, and be really rude, but not intending to. And so you want to say that a person who is virtuous, who possesses the virtue of honesty, knows how to use that. So there's a difference between having good intentions and phronesis, practical wisdom. Good intentions are just the intentions to do the right things, whereas phronesis is the knowledge and understanding of how to do the right thing in a given situation. It's more than just intentions. It's the knowledge of what the practice of the virtue would look like in that situation. It's the ability to recognize all the morally relevant features in that situation and react accordingly. Now, phronesis comes by life experience, and you can't learn it from a book. So you can't listen to this lecture and become a virtuous person. You can't read Aristotle or Hursthouse and become a virtuous person. It's one that you get by experience. So kind of like riding a bike or tying a tie, right? You can't really look on, I guess you could, but you can't really read a story about tying a tie and then do it. You might get some ideas and do something, but it's really you're gonna become good at it by practicing it. And that's the same thing that happens with phronesis. You get it from the life experience. And so really it's knowing how to know what to do in a given situation. So let me give you an example. Consider the virtue of generosity. Generosity, you might say, oh, that means that you're a giving person. Well, yes and no. Generosity is more than just the intention to give. It's a matter of knowing the right amount of the right sort of thing for the right reasons to the right people and on the right occasions. So you might say, I might ask you, would it be generous of me when I just got paid this morning actually. So would it be generous of me to send each of you a piece of my paycheck? Everybody splits up equally. Now you might say, yeah, that would be very generous of you. But there would be some people who disagree. My ex-wives would disagree because I owe them alimony. My puppies might disagree because I give them food. My landlord might disagree because I owe them rent. I can't afford to give you my entire paycheck. And giving you my entire paycheck would be reckless with my money. It wouldn't be generous at all. You might like getting the money, but that's not generosity because it's acting foolishness. So it's not giving the right amount. Generosity is not giving overly expensive gifts to the wealthy. I used to, in my first marriage, which was a very good marriage, I had great in-laws, and they were all kind of well-to-do. My in-laws, brother and sister-in-law, and her parents, and we both had. Both of us, my ex-wife and I, were working and didn't have any kids, and so we made a good income as well. And so we were sitting around one Christmas, and we had opened all of these gifts, and they were very expensive, nice gifts, expensive by an upper middle class standard. And we were looking around and seeing all of those things, and we were like, this is all really nice, but maybe we should do something a little different next year. What if, and we were just talking, what if we each drew one name, we set a price limit on it. It was a nice price limit. Set a nice price limit on the gift, and then we give what we would normally pay to a charity. And that's what we started doing after that. So giving really expensive gifts to people who can already afford it may not be a generous act. I mean, sometimes yes. So I would buy a nice, my ex loved her cappuccino, so I bought a nice cappuccino maker, and it's okay to splurge every now and then on something. I got a really nice blender, my Vitamix blender that I love, and so you can do those big things sometimes, but it's not generous always to give to the overly wealthy. If you ever saw that old show, My Super Sweet 16, where they're giving a 16-year-old a car who's crying about the color and all that kind of stuff, it just can get really ridiculous. So that's not generosity either. It's not giving to someone who is simply lazy or idle. If you're just perpetually lazy, you're not helping that person by just giving them money. They need to learn the value of a dollar and learn the value of earning things. It's not financing somebody who's in a bad situation because they overspend habitually. I remember my first semester at college, I had a little work study job. I got my first paycheck, and I spent it all in, I think, 3 days. I found that there were lots of girls around, and I wanted to go on dates and be the big spender and take people to all this kind of stuff. And so I did, and I was 3 days in. I had 2 weeks before every 2 weeks I got paid. And I call my mom and I tell her, Mama, I spent all my money. I only have $5 left, and I don't have any groceries. Can I borrow some money? That kind of thing. And she says, with $5 you can buy a bag of potatoes and some butter. And I was like, and she hung up. And I was like, oh no. So I went to the grocery store, and at that time it did. I bought me a 5-pound bag of potatoes, some butter, and I even had enough left over for a pack of Top Ramen. And for the next week and a half, I ate potatoes and Top Ramen for every meal, because my mom wasn't about to finance me because I was in a bad situation because I overspent. So the point here is that there's a difference between being generous and being a sucker. Being generous is having the virtue of generosity is knowing how to spill that, how to give that, how to spend that. And so the key distinction is that there's a difference between a well-intentioned child or teen who cannot possess the virtues and someone who possesses the virtue, and then people who are merely continent. And the distinction is that they have practical wisdom. The virtuous person knows how to apply the virtues in those situations, which will lead us to our next topic, which is eudaimonia, or flourishing, which is in the next video.